Hello everyone. I am super duper excited for today's tea time with Dr. Iyabo. Hi Dr. Nicole. Hi, I'm not sure how to address you. Should I call you Nicole, Dr. LePera, or the holistic psychologist? Which one should I do? Hi, welcome. I'm going to bring you on live. I'm just trying to get my pillow behind my back so that I'm all comfy. Okay, hi everyone. Thanks so much. Okay, Nicole works. Okay, thanks so much for joining. I'm situating my pillow in the hollow of my back so that I'm all comfy because today's tea time is a special one. I've been waiting for this day for quite a while because healing is something that I talk about all the time. I have had to go through it. I still make sure that I'm conscious to healing myself. It's just something that I believe in so much, and in my work as a pediatrician as well. So I love the work that Nicole does, the holistic psychologist. She is just changing and touching lives. And I'm so honored that she accepted my invitation, that I have her on my show today. So yeah, welcome everyone. I'm going to bring her on live. I'll just introduce myself real quick. I'm pretty sure there's many people on here who don't know who I am. My name is Dr. Iyabo Webzol. I'm a board certified pediatrician. I'm a physician entrepreneur. I own and manage my own practice in Atlanta. I'm a business and lifestyle coach for women. I've mentored medical students for so long, but I decided to start coaching women last month because I just know there's such a big need for, coaching of women, and my coaching is, in a wholesome manner. I'm also an author. My book, Permanent Happiness, is on Amazon. And I'm on the medical board of Flow Health, which is the world's largest women's wellness app. And I'm also a blogger, so I do a lot of different things here and there. And I'm a wife to my honey. I just got remarried actually this April on Zoom. And we have 4 kids. I have 2 daughters and 2 stepsons. So I'm going to bring on the holistic psychologist because I'm sure 1 hour will not be enough for us. So everyone, welcome Nicole to my show. This is Tea Time with Dr. Iyabo. I'm so excited today. I'm sure you guys can tell. Excited and so honored to have her on my show. Yes. Hi, Nicole.
Hello. I am so great. Let me ask you, what do you prefer to be called? Is it Iyabo, Dr. Iyabo?
Iyabo is fine.
Iyabo. Nice to meet you. Finally, virtually. How are you?
I know. I'm doing well. I'm doing even better now that I have you live on my show. You don't know how much this means to me because when I sent that email that day, I was not expecting a yes from you because I get so many no's from people because I send out requests all the time, and I either don't hear from anyone, don't hear back, or they say, oh no, sorry, she's too busy. And then you replied me within about 30 minutes, and I walked because I was outside on the patio, and I walked in and I started screaming.
I love that. Well, I commend you for asking because you can't get a yes or a no without that initial request. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'm honored.
Oh, thank you so much. And I love the work you do. You cannot imagine how much I love the work you do because it's right on par with what I believe in, what I've experienced myself with my healing, because I've had to heal many times. And as people who know me know, I'm very open, I'm very vulnerable. At least now I am. When I was going through my trauma, I wasn't vulnerable, but now I am. I've gone through many phases in my life, Nicole, that I've had to heal. I was born into a really good family. I have to say that. My dad, I still say he's my best friend, even though he's gone, he's no longer alive. But everything he sewed into me is still real today. My dad was my confidant. He was my mentor. He was just this soft-spoken, wonderful man. So I was lucky to have him in my life. And my mom was wonderful too. But then I married into stress and chaos. And I must say the first few years were okay. But I was traumatized towards the end of my marriage. You know, nobody's fault. And I had to heal from that. It took me a while to heal from my divorce. And I'm doing well now, but it took me a while to really start, you know, getting my head wrapped around it. So anyway, yes, so we all have to heal. It's a continuous process. So I'm sure most of you who are on here already know who Nicole is. But for those of you who don't know, I'm going to give a very short bio because you can go onto her page to learn about her. Dr. Nicole LePera is a holistic psychologist. She received training in clinical psychology at Cornell University. Through her very, very, very popular Instagram account, where she has about 3 million followers and counting. Because I think I started following you when you had about 2 million. Yeah, now you're up to 3 million, and that's because of the fantastic work you're doing in people's lives. She shares tools for transformation and healing, and her community is called #selfhealers. And I've started using that hashtag now because it just means so much to me. So, Nicole, before we dive in, I have a bunch of questions for you, and I know we won't reach everything, but do you want to say hi to everyone? Do you have any words, any beginning words you want to say?
Sure, for sure. And I want to thank you, Iyabo, for the work that you're doing, you know, especially when I hear working with children in particular, because I'm very aware of the impact that our past has. And that's how I've, you know, kind of done my own evolution in my own personal healing and in my practice. It was really understanding the impact for most of us that those past experiences have in big ways, you know, those of us that very much know the big bad things that happen, but also in the small ways that keep us restricted and compromised and unfulfilled into adulthood. So just hearing the breadth of the work that you do, and especially knowing, and especially in the pediatrics, you know, intervening with children, it's really meaningful, and with women in particular for me, because like I said, I truly understand now the impact and how our past, we do, each and every one of us carry it into our future. So what empowers me now, after my own healing journey that does continue, you know, to this day, is, you know, knowing that we can empower ourselves. So even, you know, sharing this work of healing, if we can just, if we can all just empower one human out there to create change, that's how I believe we shift really as a whole. So thank you for the work you do.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. We are all in this together. And like you said, it's a process, it's dynamic. And every day that we still exist in this world, we have to do the healing. So let's jump right in. Boundaries. I want to talk about boundaries. We throw that word around. I talk to women about it all the time. Nicole, can you tell us what it really means to have boundaries and why boundaries are so important?
Yeah, boundaries incredibly important. If you would have asked me about a decade ago or threw that word out, I would have probably had little to no idea what you were talking about, what a boundary was, and I probably would have been a little bit delusional thinking I had them in my life. So this is me here saying that this tool, I view boundaries as a tool for healing, was largely absent in my life until I took a long, hard look at really how I was showing up in my relationships. And what I came to realize, what a boundary is and what I wasn't having in those relationships were, to put it really simply, I speak in very simplistic terms, a limit, right? I didn't really have a limit or a separation I came to find in my life between myself, including my needs of maybe my physical body, maybe my emotional needs, my spiritual needs. I didn't have a separation between me and others. So that's what a boundary is. It's a limit. It's our space where we can carve out space for our own authenticity, for our own ability to meet the needs that are meaningful to us. And when we have that limit, and this is, I think, what most of us or a lot of us are looking for, then we get to operate in our relationships more authentically. And I say most of us are looking for that because most of us come into the work or come to realize, you know, something's off for us because we're experiencing a lack of fulfillment in relationships, or we're feeling like they're unequal, or no one cares about us. I'm doing all of the giving. This is, you know, dialogue that I've thought myself about me, and I definitely know others have felt themselves. So I talk about boundaries now as the pathway to authentic relationships with others, because we are interpersonal creatures. But again, until we learn how to be authentic to ourselves, we are showing up in a much more compromised way in our relationships.
Absolutely. And this is a key for women, because I talk to
Yes.
women all the time. Now that I've been mentoring medical students for many years, and a lot of the female ones have a lot of problems because they don't set boundaries in their lives. And even women now, married women, single women, dating, I get a lot. Since I got married this year, I just get tons of relationship questions. I feel like I'm a relationship coach now, but most of those problems are due to lack of boundaries. So, Nicole, give us one or two statements as to what boundaries sound like. Let's say there's a married woman on here, like I get messages all the time, and she says, you know, I'm just tired of all the emotional abuse. I'm tired of all the angry words. This is, you know, I'm just stressed out in my marriage. Give us two examples of what, you know, setting boundaries for an abusive husband. And I'm not saying it's only men that are abusive. Some women are abusive too. So please don't get me wrong. But because I work with women, that's what I deal with. So Nicole, give us two examples of statements that are boundaries.
Mm-hmm. I could offer different boundary categories. We can start there,
Okay.
right? So
yes,
some of us can have, and okay, again, because we all need different boundaries depending on
yes,
what's the dynamics happening in our relationship. So some examples could pertain to our physical body, right?
okay.
Touch, commentary, right? How comfortable am I with my physical body and how it's treated in this relationship? So a woman in a relationship might want to put up boundaries around physical touch, which physical touch feels comfortable versus not comfortable. Another area I think that applies under physical boundaries that isn't, you know, often thought about, that extends to how is my body talked about, right? Am I being sexualized in speech in a way that makes me uncomfortable? So we have
Yeah.
physical boundaries. We have
Okay.
what I call mental emotional boundaries, right? So
Those
the
are common.
ability,
Those are so common. Mm-hmm.
these are very common. So in that category, again, really simplistically, we have the ability to hold separate thoughts from a different person, to
Okay.
disagree, to hold a
Yeah.
different belief, the ability
Yeah.
to have, or the reality that many of us have different emotions in any given situation. I could
Right.
experience something right next to my partner, and her and I could have a completely different emotional reaction to it. Mine isn't right, hers isn't right. They're both valid. So that's another version of a boundary, being able to hold space to acknowledge that my feeling, whatever it might be in that moment, is real, is valid, as is
Mm-hmm.
hers. Again, when we lack boundaries in that area, right, we try to make the other person wrong for how they feel or for what they believe in service, right, of joining in what our belief is. That's a type of boundary. Another really common boundary is what I
Mm-hmm.
call resource boundary. Limits around my time, my
Ah,
stuff, right?
yeah.
My emotional resources. Am I
That's
actually
key.
available, right, for that friend that
Yeah.
calls me all the time at all hours to vent about her relationship? Not to say that I don't care to support
Mm-hmm.
that friend, but am I actually emotionally available to do so in the moment? Do I have space to put aside what's going on in my life to hear and support what's going on in yours? And again, a lot of us show up even when we've reached our
Yeah.
limit. So I think it's helpful, especially for women, because you're
Mm.
bringing up a really, really important point, which is
Yes.
we are effective not only by the boundaries or lack thereof that we were modeled in our childhood environments. I mean, that
Yeah.
extends out and we become affected by gender roles, cultural, right? The
Yes.
influences, and women in particular, I agree with you, especially because, I mean, I'm not a mother myself like you are.
Mm-hmm.
However, once children come into the mix, it gets confusing. And I know for a lot of us women, we're given outright messages. I was as well. My mother, one of her main messages was do for others, love everyone else. And what I came to realize in kind of observing and witnessing my mom, that was to her own disservice. Never in a
Mm-hmm.
way, in any space, did my mom factor herself in. And again, I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of women
Yeah.
convince themselves that I need to put my children
Yeah.
first. I'm of the belief if we're not meeting our needs, we can't really show up fully in service of others.
Yes.
Preach, right?
Yes, yes, yes. The goosebumps are coming up. My goosebumps, though, yeah, they don't often come up, but they are coming up. Yes, yes. And there were lots of questions about what if the person you're setting boundaries with doesn't respect boundaries?
Yeah, that's
What?
hard. So just to clarify, because I get this question a lot, a
Mm-hmm.
boundary is an action we take for ourselves, right? It's not an ultimatum. It's not I point the finger to you and tell you to stop doing X, Y, or Z. While that
Mm-hmm.
might be the byproduct, what I mean when I say that is what a boundary, say, for instance, the friend calling overnight. I don't say, Janet, stop calling me at all hours. What I might say to Janet, right, is if my phone rings in the middle of the night when I'm sleeping, I will no longer answer it. Now I'm
Mm-hmm.
empowering
Yeah.
myself. I'm
Yeah.
giving Janet the choice to continue to call my phone at all hours, right?
Yeah.
And if should she, the result will be I will be unavailable. So I share that to answer your question because it's an act of self-empowerment, which
Yes.
means we could get all versions of reactions from the other person, right? From
Mm-hmm.
the minimum of when we set a new boundary, especially when it's new, every other
Yeah.
night I picked up the phone. So now on Thursday, when I don't pick up the phone, at minimum, Janet's going to be a bit surprised. Where am I? Why
Yes.
aren't I on the
Yeah.
other end? And then, of
Yes.
course, that reaction, if Janet maybe has her own wounding, maybe around abandonment, now the reaction could escalate. And so for me, I've done a lot of boundary work, especially in my
Mm-hmm.
immediate family unit, because we had no boundaries. I come from what we call a codependent family, where there's a
Well,
lack
yeah. Yeah.
of that, right? So for
Yeah.
me, when I started putting boundaries up, actions I was taking for me, I did
Mm-hmm.
get all types of reaction from my family, including my worst nightmare, which was confirmation that I was being selfish. I would actually hear that. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where it becomes our work, right? We
Mm-hmm.
have to then,
Yeah.
kind of work through and understand, because while boundaries, when we set them, are difficult, the long term, in my opinion, payoff of boundaries is a
Yes.
much more sustainable relationship,
It
because I've
is.
lived the byproduct of a history of codependency. And what
Yes.
happens over time, I
Mm-hmm.
get so mad at the person I'm in a relationship with, even a
Yeah.
friendship included, for my lack of needs being met, that I call them to blame. And I say,
Mm-hmm.
I end the friendship, I end the relationship, and I look for the next person that's going to meet my needs. However, I'm setting myself up to fail, right? Because it never was on them. It was on me to
On you to
maintain
set the
my
boundary.
limits. So I say all of that to say setting boundaries is hard. We can't predict the reaction we're going to get on the other side. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times it is our work to maintain or to keep the boundary up, even when we're getting that reaction. Now, this doesn't mean, I saw some comment, there are, of course, situations where we can negotiate a middle that works for both parties. This isn't an act to be cold. Like I
Yeah.
said, this over time actually allows us to be more authentic and connected
It
to our
does.
relationships.
It does. And it adds to our peace. It adds to our peace of mind. It adds to our well-being, our mental state. It adds to so much, because I've had to do that as well with a sibling. And, even if she's
Yeah.
listening, she understands what I mean. And because I'm the
Yeah.
youngest in my family, and I had to do this with an older sibling. But
Mm-hmm.
I just set my boundaries and I removed myself and created space. And I was, made to feel like I was the one who was a problem and I'm this and I'm selfish.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents were still alive and they tried to tell me that I should break the boundary. It's not right. And I said, no, I said, I'm going to keep with it. So I did that for myself. And now we have a better relationship.
Yeah.
It may not be at the state it was at before, but we now know to give ourselves that space. So I love the relationship we have now. And when women come to me and tell me that, I have many women who send me stories this long and messages this long about how their sister does this or their brother calls them names or this and that how do they deal with this? And I said, you let them know that it's not appropriate. and you maintain your distance from them. That's a boundary. You just say, I will love you from a distance, but I'm not going to tolerate that anymore. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I really wanted to start off with boundaries because it really blocks a lot of women from peace of mind and from being able to just live a wonderful, happy life. So we've settled the boundary talk. Now let's move on. In my work in pediatrics, Nicole, and this is why I really started my work online. After I wrote my book 5 years ago and published it 3 years ago, and I started to get, into this online space and helping people, helping women, I realized that I was much more valuable doing this than going from one exam room to the other, spending 15, 20 minutes with every patient and not really seeing changes. Because 90% of the problems we deal with in doctors' offices are due to our mentality, our mindset, our unwillingness to heal. It's all preventative medicine that we need to practice. But all we're doing is giving out prescriptions. Oh yeah, do this, eat your veggies, make sure you go out and work out for 60 minutes, and then they come back a year after and they've gained another 15 pounds. So we're not really getting to the core of what we need to get to. So now in pediatrics, I notice a lot of pain in kids, a lot of unresolved hurts, and it goes from one generation to the next generation, to the next. And that manifests in adults, obviously. And I know this is a really big, broad topic, but I really want us to discuss it because people need to realize that their triggers and the way they're behaving now, their anger, their impatience, their bad relationships, is because they're passing unresolved hurts from one generation to the next. So it's an epidemic. How do we deal with this?
Yeah, thank you for speaking all of that. I know, coming myself too from a very traditional, medical system that doesn't necessarily, fully think in terms of root cause, and in my field, at least, the interconnected, and your field too, really, between the mind, body, soul. I know that speaking these truths, is difficult, isn't the most easy. So every time I connect with another practitioner, that through their own practice and experience, that's just how I came to these knowings. I witnessed, I worked with people in all different contexts, right? And I saw these universal similarities, and then I came online. And then I started sharing my story online. And then I saw that now these similarities were beyond the offices in New York City that I worked in Philadelphia that I worked in. Now I'm seeing this resonance universally. So I couldn't agree with you more. And you will always hear me talking, right, about the effects. The language I use is of our conditioning. All of those habits and patterns to start the way, again, our daily habits, the way we care for our physical bodies, all of that is impacted and imprinted by those earliest experiences, by what we were taught when we first came to this earth experience. Because the reality is, as a human infant, we are completely dependent. We can't meet our physical needs. We have no idea what this whole emotional realm of a human being has to do. We just don't know. We need help. So in that state of dependency, and given the brain waves of development, we go through all of these different brain wave stages of development that actually prime us to learn. Little babies with those wide eyes, they are quite literally sponges. They're taking in the world. And those first, depending on who you read, those first 7+ years are so impactful. And there's why, because we're dependent and because we're learning how to take care of ourselves as a human. And the impacts are everyone around us, all of the societies from micro to macro, we're learning. And the tools that we've learned in childhood, the emotional, overwhelming experiences that most of us had, either in those big moments that overwhelmed our system, or in those consistent, right, areas where my emotional needs weren't met or where my spiritual needs weren't met, they really impact us. And then because of the way our brain operates, because into adulthood, and again, depending on whom you read, upwards of 95% of our day, we are running in unconscious state. We are running from our subconscious. Using the computer analogy, right? We're running from all of those programs that we laid down in childhood. And who
Yeah.
did we learn from? Humans who learned from other humans, right? So when you pull back and look simplistically at it, intergenerational, right, patterns, you can understand how they come to be. Because the things I learned, I'm going to be limited now to teach my child, were I to have one, by what worked for me or what I knew to do or I didn't know to do. So we are passing on patterns. And that's why a lot of us, when we do look, you know, those of us who have connection with family, we see a lot of similarities. And
Oh,
for
yeah.
me, and for a lot of us, this can be confusing, right? Because we can start to make a meaning out of it, or we can start to assume that because we see these patterns in all of our family, that is our lot in life, right? Well, everyone else does it, that I have no choice. I cannot create change. And that's just simply not true. Like I said, I understand now, and I loved when you were talking about your intro and you used the word that I use day in and day out, and I practice day in and day out, which is consciousness, right? When we come to consciousness and when we can see our habits and patterns, we can give ourselves an opportunity to actually create change.
Yes. So now you said a lot there. Thanks, Nicole. But how do we, and you said we look at family and we all have similarities. So if there's all these family members from one generation to the other generation, and nobody breaks the pattern, nobody says, okay, this is wrong. I don't want to live like this anymore. This is not right. How do we, give me 1 second. Let me, yeah, I don't, there's some people who just boundaries, they just, use all this bad language when people are talking. Yeah. So yes, when they have people who are just like them all around them, how do you break out of a pattern that you see every day? That's the problem I face in pediatric practice. It's like, that's why my work that I do now is so much more impactful than in a building from one exam room to the other, because these people, what I call the pack mentality, that question was coming up, but it's so similar to what we're discussing now. There's so many people that buy into the pack mentality, the herd mentality, which I say, is for animals, not for humans. You have to be able to think yourself. You don't have to belong to what everybody's saying, and not sit back and say, is this true? Is this really uniting us? What is this doing? People just follow the pack. So then how do these children, and honestly, when I see newborns in my practice, and I've been following a family for many years, and they come in with the newborn, in my own mind, I'm praying for the newborn. I'm saying, I hope you will be the one to break this. Because I actually feel sorry for the newborn, that how are you going to be a different human being when everybody else I've seen before you has this mentality? So how do we help people to break out of that pattern? I guess it's all the work you're doing, right? It's a process, right? But how do we help them break out of that pack mentality thinking?
Mm-hmm. It's a process, and it begins, in my opinion, with learning a new foundational habit of being conscious to ourselves. So first and foremost, we need to identify how often we are, right? I just gave the stat of upwards of 95% of your day. You'll always hear me speak this. Don't believe me just because someone studied it and gave that number. See for yourself. So the first assessment, self-assessment that would be helpful is to see how conscious you are. How much are you showing up each and every day as if it's a new day, as it is, and actively making your choices, being a participant in your day? Or are you like the large majority of us, myself included, that is actually letting that autopilot run your day? So the first assessment is, how conscious am I? And a simple tip I give, and all of us at this point walk around all day long, right, with a cell phone. This could be as simple as setting like maybe 1 or 2 alarms for during your waking hours, a random time during your day. You probably will even forget that you set that alarm. And when that alarm goes off, say at 2 p.m. today, I want you to ask yourself first, when the alarm goes off, where was my attention? right? Was I fully immersed in what I was doing in the present moment, wherever I was? Or was my attention somewhere else? Chances are, I know when I began this practice and I asked myself that question, my answer was always, oh no, I was very far away. I was not here in the moment. Sometimes I would know where I was, and it typically was ruminating over something that happened that day, the fight I had with my partner, and how I cannot believe that she said that. And you know what? I should have said, and maybe next time I will. Or I also loved to worry about the future. Oh, this meeting I have tomorrow, and how will that go? It'll probably go terrible, right? Or like I said, I had no idea where I was. I just wasn't present. So if you're like me, all right, and when that alarm goes off, if you come to realize you're not present, we are given the gift of a brain that can fire and wire new connections all of our life. There was a time in medicine where we didn't believe that to be true. We actually believed our brain was done changing, I think somewhere into our 20s, definitely by the time we entered our 30s. We now know that's the farthest thing from the truth. Our brain, it's neuroplastic, as I'm sure a lot of listeners have maybe heard that word, simply means it can change. So if you come to the awareness that I'm pretty unconscious, and that means all of my old programming and patterns are running my day to day, which is why I'm getting a lot of the same, right, results in my life, why it's kind of like that Groundhog's Day that a lot of us are living, despite sometimes insight. What that means then, I need to teach my brain how to be more conscious more often. So the second part of that, if I come to realize that I'm not conscious in that moment, I can begin to use my attention, and I can use the gift of my senses. What am I seeing? What am I feeling? This is a practice called grounding. And if I begin to focus on what's happening in the given moment, right? If I do have access to, right? Even now, I can touch this hard wall behind me. Maybe I can smell the aroma, right? I can look at you in this moment. And now I'm actually firing up a new part of my mind, my prefrontal cortex, probably one that hasn't been fired very often because I've been letting, right, my subconscious run the show. The more we practice that, the more we're given the gift of choice. The more we can begin to observe those patterns now from a distance. It's not to say that they're not going to go away overnight. I can still feel that pull to those old habits. But if I begin to create space, this is how I get choice. I can now begin to make new choices to create a future that's actually different from our past.
So being present is key. Being present is very, very key. A lot of us are not present, and I've been there. I was there for many, many years. So when you now start realizing what being present means, and then you're like, oh my goodness. So I think the whole of my 30s, I probably wasn't present. I tell people that my 30s just went by in a flash because I was so busy with so much. I had just started my practice. My kids were still young. My marriage was going downhill. I just was going through so much. And now that I practice being present, I'm like, I can't believe that my whole 30s went by like that. So being present, being grounded is so important. And we're going to come to this later. I say later, it's already 1:33. Time flies when you're having fun. But journaling is so important also. I've used journaling to heal in so many situations, so many. In fact, this is how I started writing, because I was journaling so much after my dad passed, because I missed him so terribly. But we're coming back to that. You use the word simplistic a lot, Nicole. Okay, and it's funny you use it a lot. I'm happy you use it a lot, because people actually accuse me of being too simplistic. So you know those people who come to your social media and think they can judge you, but they don't know that I've done so much inner work, and I really don't. Things like that make me laugh, and I'm like, you don't know who you're dealing with. And they come and they say, you're problematic, or you're a problem, you're just too simplistic. Yeah. And of course I block them, because I know my following is, still what, 10,000, 13,000. I can still block people because I still know my whole community. But they accuse me of being simplistic, and I post and I tell people that I'm proud that I actually have simplistic thinking, because I don't overthink, and this has helped me. So even though I didn't have this as one of my questions, I want you to tell us about what being simplistic means, because I've been accused many times, actually from a lot of my doctor friends that I've had to block. They accuse me of being simplistic because I talk about something, or let's say they want me to post something about the, politics. They expect me to be totally into, the democratic thinking or the Black Lives Matter or this or that. And I'm like, I'm neither a Democrat nor a Republican. Guess what I am? I'm Iyabo. And I just use my brain to think and to absorb. I like some Republican views and I like some Democratic views. I vote based on what I think about the individual. So on my page, I know you're laughing because there's something I have on here that people have accused me of bringing you on my show because of some things. And I'm like, really? So, so because I post something on my page that maybe a Trump supporter said, but is meaningful. Like one day, several months ago, I posted this Black guy who's a Trump supporter, and he was basically talking about how we need to teach our Black kids about respect. And I thought that was amazing. And I thought, nice coming from a Black man. I didn't care whether he was a Trump supporter. I was listening to what he was saying. Oh my goodness. I think there was an earthquake on my page that day. Oh, you're so problematic. Your thinking is too simplistic. And they all started blocking me and posting rude comments. Mm-hmm. Most of them physicians. And I'm thinking, I'm actually disappointed that doctors, with all the training you've had, you can think this way. This guy is saying something that is meaningful. Oh, who is he to tell us to respect our kids? He should talk to white people first. And I'm like, okay, yeah. So tell us about simplistic.
I appreciate you sharing all of that. And I'm smiling, Iyabo, because I can obviously resonate in a lot of the ways from my own field. So, I think I'm going to go ahead and answer. I think what a question in there was with an epidemic, as far as I see it, that I believe universally affects most of us humans. I think a lot of it is primed by our systems in place. And that's an epidemic of overthinking, of trying to rely too much on, we have a gift. We have incredibly powerful brains. We have the ability to think about thought, to view our past and our decisions and troubleshoot and plan for a future, right? We have all of those amazing capabilities. So yeah, we definitely want to harness the power of our big, beautiful brains. However, I believe most of us try to overthink our way through life. I believe that our actual wealth of wisdom comes from our intuition, from our deeper knowing, and it doesn't live in our thinking mind. So I agree. And I think a lot of times in school systems, especially those of us with the higher degrees, we are kind of indoctrinated into this, overthinking. And I believe, so going back in time to a little over 2 years ago, when I started the Instagram account, it took off very quickly in popularity. And I understand why. And one of the reasons, not only the universal resonance that I was offering earlier, that these are universal truths, at least I believe, it's the fact that for what I'm talking about isn't necessarily new. I'm giving it a new language. I'm explaining it through my lens of experience, which may be relatable. And I believe that it is relatable, meaning a lot of these concepts, especially in my field, were so out there, were so overthought that no one really understood how to apply them practically or simplistically. So now, because I too am evolved and I understand the benefit, right? Putting work on an Instagram platform that can reach the world is going to impact more people. It's going to give more people access to these tools than I was able to give in my small office. And I understand that the value, because there's language, difficulties now. There's everyone speaking their native tongues around the world. There's value in simplicity. And like I said, I think some of it comes from overthinking that most of us operate in. And also when you think simplistically and when you understand how to action, that can be really challenging, because change challenges all of us, because we all have the same subconscious desire to remain in our familiar. Even if our familiar isn't serving our long-term goals, it's protective for us. So again, another epidemic in our human world is not wanting to change, is a difficulty
Yes.
around
Yes.
the new
Yes.
things. So,
Yes.
when you start to speak about empowerment and challenge these paradigms that were very much in place for a very long time, it can start to bring up a lot in a lot of us.
Yes, it does. It does. It does. It does. But I've always been a simplistic person. I was raised to be simplistic. My parents are very simple. They were very simplistic. Yeah, but this is wrong. That is wrong. I'm just not used to overthinking. So yes. So let's move on. Women and their goals and their forward movements in life and achieving their dreams. There was a question on here, but I have a question on here that I have to deal with women all the time. Women and their marriages and relationships and significant others. There's too many women out there. I don't know how to stop my phone from like going to sleep. It's a new phone and it keeps going to sleep. But women are being blocked by their significant others to be able to move forward. And I don't know how women just stay with abuse for too long. And I don't know. I mean, I can't tell a woman file for divorce or leave this person. That's not something that I do. There was a lady on here who posted a comment. I don't know if you saw her. She said she's pregnant and her husband's been hitting her and spitting on her, calling her names, and she doesn't know what to do. So these are the kinds of questions I get from women all the time. I want to start this business, but my husband thinks it's a bad idea. My husband says this. I feel trapped. What do we say to these women? Why do you have to stay in that kind of situation? You haven't been kept in captivity,
Mm-hmm.
What do
Mm-hmm.
we say to them to help them out?
I offer, and it goes right on this, kind of maps onto this concept of the familiar. I like to talk about first, before we shift in terms of change, I like to offer the reason why. Because I believe there is a reason why we become very patterned, even in our relationships, even in those relationships that we know are maybe egregiously abusive in some way. Anyone who
Yeah.
follows my work will hear me talk about a concept that I've termed trauma bond, or my definition of what a trauma bond is.
Mm-hmm.
Really, going back to how I was describing that state of dependency, because we need others to meet our needs, and because we
Mm-hmm.
are wired for interpersonal connection, we begin to bond and we engage in bonding patterns within the
Mm-hmm.
relationships in our core caregiving environment. And that's when we start to assume those roles that a lot of us, come to be familiar with. I'm the helper, I'm the caretaker, I'm the person who
Mm-hmm.
does this. What happens before long, we become, we head into school, and now we have peers and we develop friendships. What most of us come to realize when we become aware of ourselves in this new way, we tend to play the same roles in all of our relationships, right? We
Mm-hmm.
tend to be very patterned. And so for me, that's what a trauma bond is. That earliest way of being, that almost a definition of self that I've learned through these earliest relationships. So if I'm the helper self, I take ownership of that. And now I repeat that pattern, even if I know that my helping does maybe result in abusive type behaviors. I pick partners who maybe overstep my boundaries. And the reason why I talk about the why first is because I know a lot of us, we can either be very critical of ourselves, right? We see these patterns in and out of these partners that we're picking, and they never end well, if you will. And we start to wonder, what is wrong with us? If you throw in
Yeah.
a very well-intentioned friend or family member that's like, hey girl, like, that's not, don't you see this coming? The truth of the matter is, while on one level of consciousness, there's that pull again from that subconscious, because that's the
Okay.
only way we're familiar with ourselves. That's how I
Mm-hmm.
know love to feel. That's how I know my needs to be met. Even if it's not fully met, that's all I know. So
Mm.
before long, we do continue in those relationship patterns, even if, again, that higher self or that conscious part of ourself sees it. So then the goal is breaking those relationship patterns. I share that just to acknowledge universally how hard it is and how ingrained and counterintuitive a lot of this is for us, right? Because some
Yes.
listeners might be the person in a very abusive relationship that just can't step out of that familiar to change. So I think understanding that can relieve some of the self-judgment that we place on ourselves. However, it then leaves us in that same position to break those relationship patterns, to take those small steps, whether it's boundaries, right, to put up if there is active abuse, over time, empowering then ourselves to step more fully out of that relationship. And again, it comes through consciousness, conscious creation of new choices in our relationship, knowing that those new choices will be difficult and unfamiliar.
Yes, but this is all what I say to women, but it's still hard for them to leave. As you were talking, Nicole, so many women were posting on here, but it's hard for me to leave. I know I'm being abused, but I cannot leave. You know, why do men use abusive words on women? You know, my mother went through this.
Yes.
We talk about this topic all the time, but I just feel like it just doesn't change. And women will message you, message me. So they do know that it's wrong for them to, you know, to put up with that kind of behavior, but they just stay put. And I'm not a psychologist, I'm a pediatrician. So I think I'm going to start referring them to your page.
Well, there's a second piece of it too that I think could offer and be helpful, right? Which is, for a lot of us, the fear of stepping out of the only relationship we know, in a sense, for some of us, that is our only support, if you will, right? So a lot of times part of the process, and this is why I'm so impassioned about the community aspect of my Instagram, of the self-healer community, as well as in my virtual membership, because a lot of times we do need to begin developing the healthier relationships, the more supportive, authentic ones, so that we can, right, over time, begin to then step away from maybe all we have while we're building our pathway to new. So back what I was saying, we're interpersonal. We do need to heal in community. And I became very acutely aware of that as I began to, all comes together beautifully. As I began to put up boundaries, honor myself more authentically, a lot of my relationships shifted, changed, and ended. And I looked around, and a big motivator for me to go online was loneliness. I looked around and I didn't have many people outside of my partner for whom I'm eternally grateful that she and I were more or less walking in that same healing direction at the same time. I know not everyone has that gift. Outside of her, I was quite lonely. So for me, when I came and I developed the Instagram account, I had two intentions. The first was speaking my truth. Right? I was starting to come to this realization in my own healing. I was starting to actually affect change in a way that I never saw possible in myself and in my practice. I wanted to share that. I wanted to begin to put those tools out for even the one person that could resonate, not knowing how many it would be. And I was looking for the people so I could begin to build the more authentic, supportive relationship. So back to the question, right? So for some of us, it is finding those communities. It is connecting with the person that might be on the other side of the world, but can begin to be that more positive support. So as we develop the confidence then to break away from maybe those more problematic patterns, we have someone to go to. And I know a lot of us now are offering these virtual spaces. So I say that to urge anyone out there to begin to make use of that, to begin to create the relationships that are, you know, more future based for you, so that over time you can you can get the support you need while navigating a very difficult situation. Because the truth is, not all of us are going to leave tomorrow. It's going to take some time of doing the work, of developing the confidence, of getting our own empowerment in place. And so that could go a large in service, is finding the helpful supports while I'm phasing out maybe these older relationships.
I love that, Nicole. I actually love that. And that makes so much sense. This is why these women come to our pages. There's so many women who tell me that I love following you. And in fact, if they don't see a post from me for maybe, because now I post 3 or 4 times a day, because I know people want to see my post. The time I was still posting 3 times a week, they would actually message me and say, Dr. Iyabo, we're missing your post. So that's crucial. I like that answer. I love it. So people, if you're all out there and you're feeling pain, you're feeling hurt, you're feeling depressed, well, go and see your doctor. We don't want to minimize that. Go and see your doctor. Make sure you see a mental health therapist out there. So this doesn't replace you going to see your doctor, but make sure you join a positive community. And you have to do the inner work to be able to realize what a positive community is. That's another question for another day, right, Nicole? Because,
Yeah.
you know, you could think the people think they're in positive communities because, again, they all have the pack mentality, but the community they're actually in is hurting them more. So you better do the inner work first before you attach yourself to any community. Be careful, be present, be conscious. Okay. Moving on, social media. So I'm asking the questions that I get a lot. I'm trying to help my community as much as possible now that I have you here with me. A lot of people, because now we're talking about, you know, joining communities online that are positive to help them. However, on the other hand, some people misuse social media in many different ways. And I really want you to, you know, say something to women out there who are using social media in a way to, I guess, vent their own hurts and vent their own pain and not dealing with their pain before they come on. I tell some people actually to take a break from social media. When I see the kind of things they're posting, I'm like, you really shouldn't be out here yet. Go and do your inner work. And then because you're using this space in a way that is, you know, hurting you and hurting other people. What do we say to them? We're not judging you or making you do it, but I want you to help people realize what social media really is for and isn't for. Not, I know that's a huge question, but you get what I'm saying, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So social media, right now it's a tool. It's an extension of us. It's an interpersonal, atmosphere, right? We relate to others. There's so much that is in now this very new, might I add, experience of social media in the way that we're experiencing it now. And even just, as this 2020 has evolved and the pandemic, I mean, in a lot of ways, social media is our interpersonal community. And, it is, for many of us, our interpersonal world. And I say all of that to highlight, right, the ways in which a lot of us are engaging in social media, from just the use of it. How many hours am I on it? What am I doing when I'm on it? What am I looking at when I'm on it? To how am I engaging with others when I'm on it, often is a reflection of those same patterns that we're repeating in our real life. Some of us can, by extension and the anonymity of social media, right, maybe, experiment with different patterns, though more or less, we're going to see a lot of that same repetition. So we're going to see a lot of the pain and the wounding and all of the reactions and the ways that as humans we've learned, adapted, and began to replicate in our coping mechanisms play out on social media. So I say all that to say, doing the work in outside of social media, we need to integrate that into social media. Being conscious around our phone use. What are we doing? Like I said earlier, asking yourself those simple questions. How much am I on my phone? What am I doing when I'm on my phone? A little deeper question. How do I feel when I'm engaging with what I'm doing on my phone? So many of us blow by that step, and it becomes a mindless distraction to avoid feelings and or an outlet for particular feelings. So again, we really want to conscious steps in terms of social media awareness, and consumption allows us the opportunity to make conscious change. So the first suggestion is to get really clear and honest with what is the meaning of social media in your life and how are you using it? Because we're all using it differently. And then furthermore, if you come to the awareness that, I tend to go on social media in this sort of time, in this moment, I tend to look at these things and I tend to feel this way. If it's not something that you want to repeat, then you very honestly need to make conscious change in those moments, knowing that it's going to not be easy. Because I still have a habit. I'm on social media quite a lot. I run my business online. I have to be, right? Yeah. And there are so many moments where mindlessly, I don't even really want to be on my phone, and I'm tuning in to just mindless scrolling, right? Yeah. So it could be as simple as, wait a minute, do I want to be on this device right now and what this could offer me, or do I want to not? The simple things are often clothed with difficulty beneath. The difficulty then for most of us is, well, what am I left to sit in? What feeling was I avoiding? What was I going online to discharge that now I'm stuck with? and I
Mm-hmm.
have to find a new place for it. Because
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of us, that's what social media offers. Like I said, a distraction. It offers an outlet for certain feelings. And it's really just another space where all of our interpersonal dynamics and wounding can play
Mm-hmm.
out.
Yes. So, guys, social media is not for your venting. Yes, you can heal from social media if you've done the inner work and you know what you're looking for, and you can identify pages and feeds that are actually healing you and not making it worse. I can't believe how fast time went by. Nicole, we'll have to do this again. I know you're busy, but after you launch your book and everything, we have to do this again. I still
You
have
don't have
many
to ask
questions
me
for
twice. You
you.
don't have to
So
ask me twice. I'll definitely have another chat with you.
I know we'll have to do it. People are even saying on here we should come on again together. So your book is coming out soon, How to Do the Workbook, right? And then you have the Future Self Journal. So I'm a big believer in journaling. Give us a few words about journaling, and then I'm going to log off, because the last thing I want to happen is to lose this live, because this live is like, it's
Okay,
gold.
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's going on my, okay, guys, sorry, Nicole, to cut you off. It's going on my YouTube channel because I'm trying to grow my YouTube channel. So I don't post the video replays of my tea time show on my feed. So you guys are going to have to go to my YouTube channel. You're going to have to subscribe and watch this video. Yes, I'm asking you to subscribe. Yes, you have to. Okay, Nicole. So close us out with journaling. How important is journaling?
Absolutely. So I'll keep it nice and quick. So truth be told, Iyabo, I wasn't a journaler. I wasn't in the traditional sense like a lot of us do that gain a lot of value in it of journaling my feelings. So the prompts and the protocol of journaling that I actually developed was for my own healing journey. And it was actually a practice to increase my conscious awareness of the ways I want to be different and create a new future each and every day. So I had so much success with it each and every day, making a promise, right, to stick to one new behavior that I wanted to integrate to create that different future that's separate from my past. Every day showing up and writing that intention was incredibly valuable. So I gave some thinking after I, had so much of success using this tool, and I created a set of prompts that I actually just released like 2 weeks ago, a little more full expanded version of it. So anyone who's interested in a more intentional, conscious way to integrate journaling, even if you're a journaler and you do a different type of journaling, this can be very helpful. Can sign up for my email list and it will be delivered to their inbox. So that for me was I still use that tool each and every morning because each and every morning I'm still working to create change, breaking some of those old habits and patterns. So the link is in my bio on the Instagram here in the link tree. You can sign up, anyone who's interested, scrolling down to the way bottom of my new website, putting in your email, and then those journal prompts will come into your inbox and get you started with a new way to consciously journal your way to change.
Wonderful. I love you, Nicole. Your community loves you. Honestly, I mean that. I love you. I love the work you're doing. You're doing great work. I'm glad that I found you on social media. And then I told my daughter, and she's like, oh, I've been following her for a while. My 16-year-old. And she was like, oh, you didn't know about her? I've been following her. I'm like, oh, okay, good. I'm glad she wants to be a psychologist, by the way. So I have to get her and to do maybe a sort of social, virtual, I can't talk right now, virtual thing with you as an intern, because she wants to be a psychologist. But thank you. I love you. We love what you're doing. Keep it up. Thank you all for joining our live today. I will make sure I bug Nicole in the near future to come back on live with her. Thank you so much.
You will. Thank you. Sending so much love back to you.
The replay will be on my YouTube channel. I'm going to end it now so that I don't lose this valuable video. Bye. Bye, everyone. Bye.